Greetings, everybody. This is Sabin Dimitrov, aka Dinsvo the Ouster Wolf, and it is a pleasure to have you guys here for this next video. So I know I just released a really long story video of how Dinsvo dealt with some pretty severe things in one of the biggest battles the Empire has ever taken place in. So throughout this entire video, there are annotations and various frames that I have placed inside the video. And these frames, if you read them, will be explaining more in-depth information as time goes on. So if you wish to skip to these certain parts, this video I am making for you guys will further inform you guys of the different parts of the video with background information. So these are starting at 15 minutes and 52 seconds. And just pay attention to what the video is showing, and you can go ahead and jump to these time frames and see what I am explaining. So pretty much I'm making a small correction here, saying that Titan's kind of neutron star that he has inside of his ship is about 7.3 miles wide, and it's known as a neutron star reactor. So it's not really a full neutron star, but the way that it is created produces such a ridiculous amount of energy that it makes Titan's ship pretty much have unlimited energy at its disposal. Like, it will never ever run out of energy for hundreds of thousands of years. This is a synthesized star core, allowing it to be only a fraction of the weight but still house the same gravitational properties and energy output that a normal star core can. This matches the star gems that the imperial planets orbit around. Except the star gems that the planets orbit around are about the same size as the Earth's sun. Maybe twice the size, depending on how many planets are orbiting it. Now, just remember, guys, the entire video is about 1 hour, 9 minutes, and 8 seconds, and 4 milliseconds. However, hundredths of a second. Maybe a tenth of a second, sorry. And then down here on the middle bottom of the screen, you guys will see 15 minutes, 56 seconds, and 6, tenths of a second. So, just pay attention to the bottom middle of the screen, the very, very bottom, and you will be able to see the timestamps of these coming through. So you can go ahead and jump to these timestamps of the video and you will see them. Because Titan's ship was a bit bigger than the size of Tokyo, he was able to hold the synthesized star core with no trouble. This also meant that his ship, being the flagship of the Shindova Imperial Mining Corps, was able to do the heaviest lifting of mining, because of the immense and unimaginable power of this powerful beast of a ship. 76,000 degrees Fahrenheit is about the temperature of Titan's neutron star. It's a relatively cool star, considering, but it's hot enough to still provide incredible amounts of energy for Titan and his ship. And they don't have to worry about, being cold, because the star provides the entire ship the warmth that it needs. This is extremely easy to keep stable and secured because it is synthesized. They are able to alter its properties accordingly and make it perfect for Titan's ship. This uses the star's own gravitational properties to help move it easily. The plasma dagger that Titan uses on all of his ships usually reaches around 76,000 to 100,000 degrees Fahrenheit, carbonizing the ground around the plasma blade, but also making for a very clean and thin cut. Carbonizing it and turning the area to obsidian around the blade makes very stable blocks of transportable material. Because this stuff has been hypercooked into pretty much solid, carbonized obsidian, this makes it so the blocks are very stable to transport without having to worry about them breaking apart. A large portion of Titan's ships are about the size of a town and can reach pretty incredible lengths and widths. The heavy-hitting ships reach about the same sizes of small cities and are fantastic at harvesting large portions of planets easily. They are similar to the effects of the Ishimura, the USN Ishimura, I believe, or the IJN, and it's a really effective ship at, it's called a planet cracker, and it pretty much runs the same thing. They break off parts of a planet and harvest it for materials. Remember, we have molecular atomizers and molecular transmutation devices and reatomizers, so we can turn any kind of matter into whatever we need it to be. So that makes us being able to harvest anything and everything be able to be turned into anything and everything that we need. So it's really, really cool. As long as we have some level of solid matter, we can go ahead and turn that into whatever we need it to do because of our advanced technology. A good chunk of Titan's support vessels are about the size of small towns and even village size. They are usually helping with transporting large blocks of carbonized material or chunks of planets or mountains that have been severed. So Titan's ships could, carve around Mount Everest and start taking large chunks off of it, and within an hour or so, Mount Everest could be reduced down to sea level. Titan's attack strategy was to have the big mining ships go in first, and these go in fast to cut apart bigger ships, and then the smaller ships would come in behind and finish off anything that was living. This swarm strategy proved vital in keeping his people alive. Titan lost very few of his people in this war. Well, until you see the later battle reports, you would have thought, but it gets pretty staggering. So pretty much Titan's giant ships would go in first, and these big ships were phenomenal at being able to withstand withering fire, and these were fantastic at cutting enemy ships in half or even to multiple pieces, because the big ships would be able to sprout multiple plasma daggers. And then once that happens, this would make a temporary safe zone for the smaller ships, and even the smaller ships after that, to be able to come in and cut more pieces apart from those bigger pieces. So this was a great way for Titan to be able to use a swarm strategy and devastate the enemy fleet with ruthless efficiency. The mining vessels were very good at putting up with withering attack from the enemy because of their advanced armor. They were able to neutralize the most of the enemy's weapons fire from the enemy because of their advanced shielding and armor composition. Remember, Titan for his ships specifically uses an advanced kind of synthesized nuclear pasta, and what this does is that this uses an ablative manner of armor for his ships that can withstand just unimaginable amounts of punishment. So even though Titan did lose some of his ships during this battle, he was able to do astronomical amounts of damage to the enemy because of the ablative manner of his ship's armor. It is a multi-layered plasmic gel and synthesized pasta-like armor, which would allow the ships to be able to have magnetic properties to pretty much disrupt almost all energy projectiles from the enemy up to about 80%. And if the ships overload their reactors and, put up a pretty, strong energy field around the armor, they are able to also block a lot of physical weaponry, like projectiles made of actual solid matter instead of energy. This would also make the armor be able to absorb energy and be able to feed that back into the ship and then fire that back at the enemy via an energon disruptor diverter. Titan's fleet consisted of many thousands of large-scale ships, meant for carving and taking apart planets and moons. Then, he had about 5 or 6 times the amount of medium-sized ships to move larger pieces of the harvested material away from the main mass. Then he had multitudes more of smaller ships to handle breaking up the pieces and taking them to the desired locations or shipyards for further processing. Titan had an absolutely massive fleet because he was harvesting a pretty large planet nearby. This meant that he had about 40% of his forces nearby, and this meant that he was able to quickly jump in and get his people in there to take the heat off of Port Adinstvo. The melee-style mining tools that could be used as weapons. So they had multiple different kinds of tools that could be used as weapons. They had specialized plasma saws that were great at using an accretion-style disc of pure, angry energy to cut apart things with incredible accuracy. So it's pretty much this like giant spinning miniature, like a giant spinning blade that uses similar properties to a black hole to create an accretion disk of hundreds of thousands of degrees to be able to make a quick little burst saw that can cut through pretty much anything unobstructed. That was one of the tools that they could use. Another one was those plasma daggers, and those bad boys would burn hot, and those ones could actually be run for much longer periods of time instead of pulses of energy. Titan also had massive rams attached to his ships, all of them. And these rams are made to stick into the carbonized blocks of material that are being harvested. This allows the ships to be able to grip onto them tightly and not have to worry about them getting out of reach and suddenly, being hurled off in a random direction. But, however, these rams could also be reconfigured on the spot into shattering rams, and these specialized rams are made specifically to break apart carbonized pieces of material by using the ship's mass and body as a hammer. So pretty much Titan can turn all of his ships into pretty much really angry battering rams. So the ships themselves can be used as melee weapons, which is horrifying if you are an enemy fleet, realizing the enemy ship is kamikazing themselves directly into you. Especially considering their armor makes it really hard to actually damage them, and your ship not being able to have enough time to get away from them. So pretty much you're going to have massive damage done to your ship in a super short amount of time. And then another tool that Titan can use as a melee weapon would also be grappling hooks. And that's one of the things that made Titan's ships also incredibly effective, that they could grab enemy ships. And because his ships have way overpowered engines for their size, they have a thrust to weight ratio of like 10 to 1. So they can move over 10 times the mass of their ships, meaning they could grab other enemy ships and hurl them in random directions because of their way overpowered engines. Like, it is incredible. And because they also have advanced tug engines, these tug engines can move almost 30 times the ship's weight when overcharged. So pretty much Titan ships would use other ships of the enemy as battering rams and slam them into other ships. This also protected their ships from getting pummeled by enemy fire because they would be using the enemy ship's hull as a shield as they would slam that into other enemy ships. So that's another way that Titan would use his ships to be able to slam into enemies. And the grappling hooks would even allow the larger ships to swing around the smaller enemy ships like a flail, slamming them into enemy ships at extremely high velocities, causing catastrophic damage and immediate destruction of the ships. So Titan was able to use, grappling hooks even from his own ship, the ASIMC Shepherd, and that would just obliterate even their biggest capital ships because he could use his grappling hooks and other things to grab a giant capital ship and hug it at the enemy, which is a absolutely hilarious and yet one of the most terrifying ways that your ships can be destroyed. So, yeah. So Titan had many different ways to use his tools as melee weapons, and it proved to be exceptionally effective. Just as a reminder, guys, pay attention to the bottom timestamp of the video at the very bottom of the screen at the middle part. So that way, if you want to go to that part of the video, you can, as I'm reading to you guys the main story of the video. The reactor core carrier ship is specifically built to handle exploding reactors, overloading reactors, reactors undergoing meltdown, and more. So its armor handled the explosion perfectly, despite it being one of the most powerful explosions it has felt in its service time. So this ship has dealt with reactors, going kablooey, but remember the Unity has overpowered reactors, so even just a weapons reactor exploding hit the ship pretty darn hard. However, the armor was specifically made for stuff like this, so even though being hit pretty hard, the ship's armor was able to handle this with very little problem. Titan always makes sure to have this special medical ship with him that he created specifically to handle grievous injuries and such. The ship was originally made for a densed foe, but it is also used for Titan and other people if needed. That medical ship is still primarily for the Grey Wolf, a densed foe, and was specifically made for a densed foe to make sure that he would be kept alive. But, as previously explained, Titan also uses it occasionally for people he needs to save. Woo! Oh, farts. The Good People's Republic were those non-allied ships that came in to aid Adinstvo in the Battle of Attrition. Despite being heavily outgunned, the Good People's Republic still came in with everything they had. The Good People's Republic saw what the enemy was doing, and they saw that Adinstvo's allies and forces were starting to have the pressure put on them. Because remember, the enemy started out with like 40,000 capital ships alone. And suddenly, they were like, fine, we'll just bring in more of our stuff. So they started calling in every bit, like all of their ships. So that would bring in around, another 200,000 ships. Because remember, the enemy was going to do everything they could to attack the Estovakian Empire, and they knew that if they could destroy Adinstvo and cause crippling damage to his allies, they then could call on their other allies to do more damage. So they were going to do everything they could to hurt and kill Adinstvo and destroy the Good People's Republic, the Estovakians, and Titan and his people in the Shindova Mining Corps. So, to help offset the disparity of the enemy's growth in the battle, the Good People's Republic sent everything that they had over to help, and even if it was just to provide fire support or medical aid, they had ships for every purpose. The Good People's Republic had a F-ton of ships, just a fart ton of ships. So, even if they were still outgunned, they had way more ships than the enemy had, even if they were outgunned and underpowered. Because the Good People's Republic ships were not as strong as major Empire ships, they had to learn how to make their ships fast, and to be able to hit hard and to get out and come around for another attack. They were unimaginably exceptional at strafing runs. The Good People's Republic's forces measured in at around 82,000 ships at the very start of the battle, ranging from capital class ships, to small frigates, and even ships that they would call bruiser cruisers. The bruiser cruisers were freaking awesome. Those were ships that were floating bricks of armor and packed a massive weapon inside of them. So these ships had good survivability, and they were able to fire a massive weapon inside of them. They weren't really good for much of anything else, but they provided a fantastic line of defense against the enemy, and that's one of the reasons why they were able to hold back the enemy forces, so effectively. In fact, the Good People's Republic actually found ways to use hyper-intensity burst weapons on super-fast ships to fly by enemy ships and deliver devastating blows of hyper-intensity energy into the bodies of the enemy ships, causing destruction on a mass scale because of the pure explosive energy of the energy weapon, burst weapon. So pretty much, it would be ships that have engines on the back and like a fart ton of armor, and then one giant weapon that is attached at usually on a revolving central core. So the ship would be able to orientate that weapon in a complete 360 degree rotational availableness. So these ships would be super fast, and they would pack armor, and these bruiser cruisers would then be able to come in really fast and then fire their weapon as they skim across the surface of an enemy ship, and then quickly get out of dodge as their weapon recharges. And sometimes their bigger ships would even have multiples of these weapons, which would allow them to be able to hit upwards of 6 enemy ships before having to quickly get out before they were fired upon. And this was a fantastic way for them to spread discord and chaos in the enemy fleets. So this was a great way for them to break up the enemy formations and provide some level of suppression. The Good People's Republic also found ways to make stellar shields. These were incredibly thick, armored, and shielded paper-like ships that were very thin, but extremely long and wide, providing a large armor barrier to protect vulnerable ships from attack. They had ships that were like glass cannons, or did not have as much armor. So these absolutely massive ships would be able to fly into battle and unfold into like 10 by 10 mile thick shields, which would be all reactors and energy shields and armor. And because of this multi-layered defense of these powerful stellar shields, these things would be able to hold back just withering fire from the enemy, even for extended periods of time. And these would even be able to protect defenseless ships as they would try to get out of a dangerous situation. So these stellar shields were extremely effective at providing constant places of safety for their less armored ships. On top of that, these stellar shields would actually have portholes that could open up to allow ships to be able to fire through them. And then those portholes would close back up once the enemy started to fire again. This was an extremely effective tactic, allowing the Good People's Republic to remain an extremely effective military. And that's one of the things that allowed them to hold back and even push back this massive giant fleet of the enemy, because they would be able to use these giant stellar shields as like Um, you know that like Roman walking shield um that they would call the turtle, that they would be able to do with their giant shields. That's pretty much what the Good People's Republic were doing. They would turtle their shields together and then quickly spread them apart, fire just a devastating volley of weapons fire at the enemy, and then quickly close back up as the enemy would return fire. And this provided an extremely effective tactic at holding back and even pushing the enemy further back, giving Titan's forces some reprieve, and even their own forces a chance at damaging the enemy. Adinistro had miniature reactors inside of his body to keep his biomechanical components functioning. This allows him to be able to function even if his biological components of his body start to fail. Unfortunately, these were being affected by the fallout of the failing reactors and Reactor X. This was before Edensville had upgraded body reactors, so unfortunately, these ones could be affected by Reactor X, and because those were starting to shut down, this was starting to kill Edensville. Edensville's body has modular components, so it does make it very easy to replace things that are damaged. Unfortunately for him, this damage was so widespread and severe that switching out components was no longer an option, and reconstruction was the only way to keep him alive. Reconstitution, I meant. Hopefully, with the new Astrolic Dark Tech improvements, Edensville's body will be able to be a 100% biological. This is in the future, mind you guys. Until Titan and Edensville can finally unlock the final form of Astrolic Dark Tech, which would then be Astrolic Dark Tech Biotech. So, but this would still be able to house biomechanical properties to allow him to be able to function on both levels, and giving him, finally, after so many centuries, a 100% flesh and blood body. This would hopefully be after once Titan and Edensville unlock the final piece for transmutative Astrolic Dark Tech Biotech. This means that Edensville's body will be able to form whatever is needed out of pretty much nothing, and then be able to return back to flesh and blood once finished. This would also make healing and fixing Edensville, if he ever received grievous injury, multitude times easier because of the transmutative Astrolic Tech, transmutative Astrolic Dark Tech Biotech. This will hopefully be the final and last form of the Great Wolf Edensville. Then, because of this, Edensville will finally be able to achieve his dream of finally being 100% flesh and blood. Once again, even if that means it is still biotech. It still counts as flesh and blood, with exterior components instead of interior components, making him much more modular and easily customizable. This will also mean that his internal bioreactors will be able to run off of food and things that he consumes, instead of having to run off of fuel cells or blood. This will make his body much easier to function. And because of the massive optimization that would be undergoing this would make it so that way his body has to consume way less energy to actually function. Like almost 100th of what he needs to function now. On top of that, the optimization would be so exponential for power consumption in his new body in the future that he won't have to deal with as many connections or technological components anymore because of the biotechnic abilities. It will all be natural and run off of flesh and blood, while still having the reliability of good old-fashioned machinery. As stated in this story at this point, his new body will be much more easy to heal and reconstitute because of the biotechnic astrolic dark tech, which will run just as as flesh and blood which will run just as a flesh and blood body does. No more long recovery times. This also means mentally and emotionally and cognitively as well. So he will be able to bounce back from, mental, emotional, and cognitive trauma much quicker because the armor will be, the body will be able to go back to a restore point instead of having to deal with reconstructive therapies. So he will still have those experiences and deal with the side effects, but he will be a lot more stable instead of having PTSD fits and going ape turds when something bad happens. But this may be a century or so down the road. So until this point, he's going to have to deal with the extensive medical care that he needs to keep him functioning. To keep with him, to keep him functioning. But once he finally ascends to his final form, all this can finally be put behind him. Then Adensvo can finally be whole and free by the blessings of the great Creator. Just like her mate, Sufti stayed by her husband's side and fought alongside him, willing to give up her life as well, as long as it meant that she was with her love and her beautiful and wonderful mate Adinstvo. She was the definition of true and boundless loyalty even until death. Despite Adinstvo wanting her to jump ship to survive, she vehemently rejected his proposal and swore that she would stay by his side until the very end, kissing him deeply before grabbing the weapon's controls. As highly advanced as the medical technology and science is in the Astral Empire, there are a few things that it has trouble fixing. And unfortunately, one of those is mental and emotional health after a traumatic experience such as this. 99.999% of the injuries in the Astral Empire are able to be fixed without too much trouble. However, extensive damage such as this requires the reconstitution chambers, and these are readily available on 24/7, 365 ships, always orbiting the planets, ready to bring aid to anyone who needs it. This is the main reason why people must go in for their yearly biomolecular hyperscans. So that way, if they ever do suffer a horrific injury, their information can be uploaded to a reconstitution chamber if needed, allowing their bodies to be rebuilt perfectly. Adensvo's astrolic rebirth pouches are updated once every month, and are also constantly uploading information to the reconstitution chambers that are near him, just in case he has to be rushed to one of them for aid. Usually the ones built out of astrolic dark tech. The enemies were willing to exhaust all of their resources if that meant that they were able to get to Adensvo and kill him, or to destroy his allies and his forces. Because the Unity was out of commission, this put a lot more pressure on the allies and the Astral Empire. One of the reasons why the Astral Empire had very little trouble holding back even massive fleets from enemies before this was because the Unity was so freakishly powerful, and because Adinstvo was so vicious with his attacks with his ship, the enemy would be brought into chaos, and that would allow Adinstvo's main fleet to finish them off. This meant that this enemy needs to be defeated at all costs, and as quickly as possible, as more of the reinforcements come in, putting a lot more pressure on the Allies and the Good People's Republic. There were only 4 major groups that were really fighting in this war of attrition. 1. the Astral Empire. 2. The Eslovakian Empire. 3. The Good People's Republic. And 4. Titan and the Shindova Imperial Mining Corps. This was Titan's ultimate sign of defiant disrespect, and desecrating dead bodies purposefully as a sign of intense hatred and wrath against those empires. Titan also filmed himself tearing apart bodies personally of enemy crew that were still alive as an extra level of disrespect and defiance. Let's see. So yeah, pretty much Titan was saying a giant FU on so many different immoral levels to the enemy. Titan's wrath and hatred was broadcasted in the direction of the attacking enemy empires, that he would bring forth biblical and apocalyptic destruction upon anyone who puts his friend in danger or messes with his people. One of the only times that Titan has ever gone on the offensive with such hatred and anger inside of his heart. Titan was described as being in a state of blind rage that caused even his own people to tremble if they wanted to talk to him. Titan was described as having extremely destructive anger, as he had a bloodlust trying to find the survivors of the enemy fleet so he could disembowel them personally and tear apart their flesh with his powerful jaws. Remember, Titan is like a oversized Tibetan Mastiff. Massive jaws, incredible jaw strength, and just a body that is pretty much all muscle and thick fur. Pretty much Titan would be able to rip apart the Yeti or Bigfoot in his sleep. Like, Titan is a terrifying individual. And in fact, he actually, he actually rivals Edenstville in strength. That is how strong Titan is. So it tells you just how much he has to hold back. Now we are at 39 minutes and 40 seconds on the dot. Remember, the enemy had extremely advanced and unimaginably powerful ships that were made to be unstoppable in an invasion. So, the allies in these 4 groups are all fighting against ships that are meant to be as survivable and destructive and evil as possible. The goal was simple: destroy everything as quickly as possible before we are overwhelmed. This meant that the Eslovakians' Astral Empire, Good People's Republic, and Titan's Shindova Imperial Mining Corps had to bring in as many ships as they possibly could, as quickly as they possibly could, to keep the enemy at bay and as far away as possible from the critically damaged AAIHF Unity and the critically wounded Edenstville. Other sources say that it was possible that it was a week to even 2 weeks of continuous 24/7 fighting. But unfortunately, that data was lost in the chaos. But slowly, the information is being reconstructed. So far, it has said to be within the period of a fortnight or less. A fortnight is an old term meaning a 2-week period. Or, I believe, a complete moon cycle? I forget exactly what the original designation for fortnight was, but I know it's a 2-week period. 40 minutes, 35 seconds, and 5/10 of a second. Titan made sure to personally have all of the admirals and the masterminds behind this unprovoked attack rounded up, so that way he could kill them personally and devour their flesh. This accounted to around 38 individuals, and all of them were disemboweled and dismembered personally by the wrathful and vengeful Titan. All of his meals were of the flesh of his enemies until the last of the bones were picked clean. This defining act of barbarity and cruelty quickly showed just how much Titan cared about his friend Edinstvo. That the often gentle and kind Titan had inside of him. He was very good at controlling his anger, and often was the voice of reason in tough and scary situations. So this was a very harsh difference from the usual Titan. Titan kept these 38 individuals locked up inside of a secret ship that was unmarked, and he would visit once every week to take another victim and consume them. He did this in honor of his friend Edinstvo, who ate the enemies that attacked Titan and his people. This was the ultimate sign of respect and love for his friend, as he returned the favor that Edinstvo did for him, consuming the enemies. That put Edinstvo's life in danger. The people of the Astral Empire knew that Edinstvo would consume individuals who were the masterminds of unprovoked and evil attacks against his people, and especially Titan. So, when they saw Titan do the same in honor of Edinstvo, they were horrified at first, and understandably so. Like, Titan did it in an extra barbaric manner, eating pieces of the body that were not essential at keeping them alive, and saving only the vitals for last. But when they realized the significance of this, they understood why and the honor behind this. This earned Titan a strange but newfound respect with the people of the Astral Empire. 41 minutes, 14 seconds on the dot. Although the losses on the enemy side were catastrophic, and resulted in the utter devastation of their forces, the Astral Empire and their allies did not come out of this unscathed. Because of the advanced and extremely powerful nature of these powerful ships from the enemy Empire coalition, this brought forth record losses on all four parties that really shook all four empires because of the intensity and devastation of the war. The reason why I use this font is because this is for extremely serious topics in the video. So if you see this when you are watching the other video, you know that this is something that is extremely serious and important, and often pretty severe. Loss count estimated. Astral Empire. 438 Protector-class hyper-warships, 7 medical ships, 6 capital ships leading the hyper-warships divisions, 45 salvage ships, 3 rescue ships, 1 starbase experimental, and finally, and sadly, the AAIHF Unity. Casualties: 234,652 killed in action. 123,946 wounded. 343 MIA, missing in action. Results: catastrophic losses reported. Loss count estimated. Slovakian Empire. 30 heavy assault carriers, 850 heavy cruisers, 620 frigates, 1,670 brawler-class cruisers, 78 medical ships, 33 salvage ships, 88 rescue ships, 4 mobile bases, the flagship, the EIHFF Ikundra, which means honor in their language. Casualties: 592,987 killed in action, 232,766 wounded, 245 missing in action. Results: devastatingly crippling losses reported. Rebuilding of the military is top priority. Loss count estimated. Shindova Imperial Mining Corps and Workforce. 3 Hyperclass Planet Miners. 12 Moon-class miners. 38 Asteroid-class miners. 4 tugging ships. 2 salvage ships. 6 Accretion-class harvesters. 82 all-purpose township-class miners. 7 Comet-class miners. And 1 reactor recharging ship. Casualties: 58,789 killed in action. 22,387 wounded. 45 missing in action. Results: heartbreaking losses. Productivity minus 46%. Loss count estimated. Good People's Republic. 4,820 striker-class ships. 2,250 heavy cruisers. 1,420 frigates. 570 bruiser cruisers. 29 medical ships. 22 salvage ships. 44 rescue ships. 20 motherships. 7 swarm-class carriers. 12 fast strike boomers. 13 Halcyon flagships lost. 10,879 undocumented ships destroyed. Casualties: 2,436,987 killed in action. 432,766 wounded. 1,295 missing in action. Results: monumental losses resulting in military deficiency. Military exhausted and devastated. Loss count estimated. Enemy Imperial Coalition: 92,000 plus heavy assault carriers, 34,960 heavy cruisers, 24,620 frigates, 15,070 battleships, 2,632 medical ships, 900 salvage ships, 550 rescue ships, 33 mobile bases, 222 Division Fleet flagships, 3,842,633 fighters, 700,000 heavy fighters, 400 invasion troop carriers, and 987 giant city ships. Casualties: 2,932,836. Let me try again. Casualties: 2,932,836,987 killed in action. 38 devoured. Results: no survivors of the war and no ships left intact. Diagnosis of the cause of the war. Motive: the complete and utter destruction of our ally, the Estovakian Empire. Observation: a complete and full-scale invasion force meant to take over and occupy the Estovakian people long-term in a full-scale imperial incursion and subjugation. Nearly a third of a planet's worth of people were ready to take on the Estovakian people, approximately nearly 3 billion heavily armed soldiers. Goal: completely overwhelm and devastate the Estovakian military and bring the empire to its knees to become enslaved to the enemy's imperial coalition. It would take an additional 38 weeks to eat the last individual who was in charge of this horrific atrocity that almost took the life of a Dinstvo. Titan would eat one individual a week, and each time the flesh tasted sweeter and more inviting every bite he took of the still wiggling victim in his jaws. This is marked at 42 minutes and 6/10 of a second. 43 minutes, 41 seconds. Titan's ship, the ASIMC Shepherd, is able to bombard planets with lethal amounts of pulsar-level radiation, stripping the planets of their ozone layers and atmosphere, and being able to kill anything that is living on the surface and massive swaths from orbit. It would be estimated that he would be able to destroy all living things on a planet within a day of a bombardment. There were numerous times during this period of deep depression that Edensvo wished for death and would often look for ways to end his life. However, under the very careful care and watchful eye of Titan, this was avoided, and he was comforted and given hope ever so slowly through this process. It was said that Titan would be holding back tears as he would embrace his dear and precious friend tightly, as Edensvo would be weeping uncontrollably, feeling devastated and broken. Remember, guys, this war was catastrophic on all sides, and all sides suffered greatly. Edensvo did not feel confident or safe in other parts of his empire. So, he would spend as much time as he could with his dear friend Titan, trying to have some level of security and stability to hold on to. Big Lungs McGee and Frank Sartorius Johnson would continue to stay by Edensvo's side, keeping careful watch over him, and helping Titan with whatever was needed to be done to assure Edensvo's well-being. It is said that the Tar people of Taurus Alpha begged Titan to have Edensvo live on their homeworld, so that way they could take care of Edensvo just as he had taken care of them, and give them a second chance at life and a new beginning. After careful thought, Titan agreed with this and proceeded to have all the medical personnel and equipment and facilities shipped over to Taurus Alpha. There is a possibility that Edensvo may be inhabiting a new Tar body instead of its normal bipedal form. It is possible that this is Edensvo's new form. Possibly a new Tar body based off of the amazingly successful and incredible treatment this is for the critically ill. Titan might be helping develop a new, more rugged and powerful Tar body for Edensvo. LOL. This is to something I said that was funny. At 48 seconds and 48 minutes, 53 seconds, and 8/10 of a second. Sorry. So, yeah, at 49 minutes and 50 seconds, and, it was actually a very sad sight to see. This very adorable and very beautiful astral dragoness whimpering and scurrying around like a lost puppy, trying to find something they care about. And then, of course, a shout out to my best friend in the universe. At 50 minutes and 19 seconds. There we go. Gee willikers. Unfortunately, sometimes Titan does deal with fits of rage, and he unfortunately can lash out at individuals that he sees as weak or not pulling their weight. It's like getting hit with a sledgehammer. He has massive fists. "54 minutes and 41 seconds. There is a big possibility of a Tar body coming up. Titan did not take any offenses in Edensvo's choices to remove some of his choices. He appreciates the reason why Adinstvo does things the way he does, and he wishes to help Adinstvo to lead the empire effectively. Not leave, but lead. There's a reason why I'm making this video, because sometimes some of these may not make sense. So like I said, just pay attention to the bottom timestamp as I scroll across the video. The Estovakians especially heavily compensated the Great Wolf and showed their greatest love and admiration for their dear friend and savior Adinstvo. Without Adinstvo's actions, their people would have suffered greatly, even if they would have been managed to hold back the enemy. Adinstvo and Titan would go to these 4 empires on their heroes' marches: the Astral Empire, the Estovakian Empire, the Good People's Republic, and the Shandova Imperial Mining Corps. Poor Adinstvo would be seen trembling uncontrollably as he would relive the footage of his terrifying ordeal. Tears of blood would be streaming down his face as Titan would use a cloth and wipe them off of his face. Remember, sometimes grief and stress can be so great that it can cause blood vessels inside of a person's tear ducts to break, and they will literally be crying tears of blood. Like, if a person is in so much agony because of the stress or trauma that they dealt with, the immense pressure put on their veins can actually break and, like I said, have tears of blood. That's also something that Jesus dealt with when he was in the garden, asking the Lord to take the cup from him, but then ultimately submitting to the Lord's will. I believe it was a garden of Gethsemane, if I remember right. We are at 57 minutes, and 36 seconds. Adinstvo would be seen often rubbing his face against the caskets of his friends, as his mind was tortured by boundless grief and tormented, knowing that he would never be able to serve with his friends again. This was a sad and heartbreaking sight to see, of such a powerful leader reduced to shambles over the loss of his friends. It was reported that Adinstvo's eyes were wide with horror, and his mouth open in shock as he watched just how truly gruesome and horrifying the sight of his friends and comrades dying was. It was an absolutely horrible and slow and agonizing death, while these valiant and incredible individuals still manned their stations despite their last breaths leaving their lungs. And very few things horrify and terrorize Adinstvo. But when he saw this with people that he served with for such a long time, this tore him apart. It was estimated around 93 planets total in the Good People's Republic. Some people say 123, but some of those are protoplanets and, in the early stages of colonization. So the estimated total of heavily inhabited planets would be about 93 in the Good People's Republic. This is at 1 hour and 9 seconds. One hour, 3 minutes, and 18 seconds. Outside of the Astral Empire, the Good People's Republic is actually said to be the biggest conglomerate in the known universe. In fact, once the military and civil defense forces are upgraded and brought up to par, they will be in possession of the second or third most powerful military to ever exist. They came fighting, knowing that they were helping aid somebody that also thought like them, and tried to lead their people with the best of heart. They knew that if they could help buy Adinstvo at least a little bit of time, then they would be able to help keep him alive and well, and push back the enemy long enough until the big guns came. One of the reasons why the Good People's Republic did so well in the first half of the war is because they had their stellar shield set up, so that way they would be able to bombard the enemy with heavy weapons fire, and remain virtually invulnerable for frontal assaults by the enemy. Titan was the main reason why this war did not end in disaster. Titan could probably single-handedly take out the majority of the enemy fleet. But because the enemy had such an insane number of ships, Titan would probably be overwhelmed, and this would have probably ended in disaster. But Titan did buy Adinstvo and the Estovakians the time needed to get their militaries in order and their fleets over to respond to the enemy. Titan was the main reason why this war did not end in disaster. The other empires that were not part of these initial four groups actually relinquished their citations and compensations, realizing that they came not quickly enough to help Adinstvo. So, this was a way for them to pay a level of penance for their inability to act quickly enough. They felt greatly disgraced, and they put a level of self-humiliation on them and their own people, realizing that they should have been active much quicker. And this put forward a lot of new, ever-ready practices in order from this point on. And that's the end. So, yeah, I hope that this video was able to... Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. Wow. This has been an hour-long video? Goodness gracious, time goes by super fast. What the heck? Yeah, so, anyway, guys, enjoy another super long effing video, I guess. Sheesh. But I didn't even do that much reading. What the heck? Okay. So anyway, yeah, I hope that this explanation video of these annotations helped you guys be able to understand what was going on. Gee willikers, if I could have timed this correctly, I would have been able to, you know, set this up for you guys properly, but that would have required way too much timing. But yeah, anyway, I hope that this video has helped you guys understand the background text of the other video. So I'm sorry that you guys have to go through another hour-long effing video, but I hope that this will be able to help, you know, help you guys understand, you know, the significance of this battle and the people behind it. Anyway, this has been Sabin Dimitrov, aka Adinstvo the Wolf, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys here for this video, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. You guys stay awesome, and always remember, God bless.